Hello, everyone, and welcome to our series of Blueprint Labs. We are so excited to kick off our first one featuring our manufacturing solutions. So, we are very excited to have Rick Freitas here with us today. I can give you a quick introduction of myself if you haven't joined any of our previous webinars, but my name is Ruthie Senanayaka, and I work on the marketing team here at Blueprint. And if you have not heard much about Blueprint, feel free to hop onto our website. Just go to bpcs.com and learn about our solutions, the different industries that we focus on. But manufacturing has been a big one lately, and so we wanted to dive into this topic. If you have any questions throughout this session, feel free to add them into the Q&A, into the comments section if you're watching live. But we are excited to kick things off. And before we start, Rick, would you give us a quick introduction about yourself and how long you've been at Blueprint and what you do here?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Ruthie. Hi, everyone. My name's Rick Freitas. I'm a senior business intelligence engineer for Blueprint. I've been with Blueprint for about 3 years now, and I also manage our team of BI engineers. I've been in the high-tech industry for about 30 years, if you can't tell. And I've spent about the last 17 years really focusing on BI and analytics. My expertise is in Power BI, but I am growing that in the Power Platform space as well. So that is me. Are we ready to kind of kick things off? Great.
We are,
So,
yeah.
folks, I've got a couple monitors here, so I'm going to be looking towards the monitor, not actually at the camera. So sorry if you're seeing my side of my face here. So I'm really excited to talk to you today about some work that we've done with a bottling manufacturer around the Power Platform, and really two unique use cases that we've done here. Really, the goal here is to show you how transformative the Power Platform is, and ultimately how Blueprint can help you with anything that you want to do on the Power Platform side. While I'll only be showcasing really two use cases here, primarily around Power Automate and Power BI, as well as Power Apps, we have a lot of other use cases that we've done. And so feel free to contact us after this meeting to discuss those. And if we do have more time at the end, I can certainly talk to a few of the other things we've done in the Power Apps and Power Automate space. And finally, so just to be clear and kind of set the stage here. So we are a consulting company, and essentially the work we do is for our clients, right? And so that work is done within their environment. So today, what I'm going to do is walk you through some diagrams and some screenshots of the work we do. I don't have any actual working demos, but conceptually, I think I've set this up in a way that you can understand the work that we've done without having live demos here, and hopefully get the gist of what we did. Great. So with that, why don't we go ahead and kick this off? Another thing, folks, sorry, I can't go into full PowerPoint presentation mode here. I'm sharing half of a screen here and a very large monitor, and it does not play well with PowerPoint. So we're just going to try to hopefully raise the size here, like I did, up to 130%, and hopefully you can read this stuff relatively well. So let's first and just kind of ground ourselves on the Power Platform. Now, like I said, we're going to concentrate mostly on the first three items here: Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate, because those are what we use. But I wanted you to have a better understanding of the broader ecosystem that is the Power Platform. Now, the Power Platform has been around since 2019, but like Microsoft does with a lot of their products, really the components that make up the Power Platform have been around a lot longer, right? So we know Power BI has been around since 2015. I think it was July 2015 was the release date. But in fact, if you've used Power BI, you know that a lot of the things within Power BI were available in Excel around 2010, and then eventually made itself into an actual product called Power BI. Power Apps, I think both Power Apps and Power Automate's been around since 2016. Power Automate used to be called Microsoft Flow, so they've changed the naming on that. But really, this is classic Microsoft of bundling different products together into an ecosystem to help users integrate things much more efficiently and to really help build a complete system that is useful for the industry. Same thing they did with Office, and same thing that they're doing now with Microsoft Fabric, right? So I'm not going to hit on everything here, but I'm sure that most folks are familiar with what Power BI is. Here, it's the reporting tool that we use out of the Power Platform. Power Apps is your low-code to no-code app development tool for building modern mobile and web apps. Power Automate is your process automation. It's your workflows. Copilot Studio here, formerly called Power Virtual Agents, is now part of the Power Platform. And think of Copilot as being a broader or larger LLM tool, which also integrates ChatGPT into it. Versus if we look down below at these second tier services, there is an AI builder tool, but that is very specific to Power Apps and Power Automate. And those use cases are much more around sentiment analysis, object detection, and form processing. And then we have Power Pages up here on the right. And again, we're not going to dig into these, but I want you to be aware of what's available here. Think of Power Pages as your external facing website for partners or customers. So any of the work that you do, whether it be a Power App or some kind of flow or something, and you want to share that with partners, that's the way to do it, right? And then clearly there's my last time I looked, 700 plus data connectors. So you can connect just about anything here. Think of Dataverse as a cloud-based data warehousing option that you can utilize. And then Power FX, it's really the DAX analysis expressions, the data analysis expressions, or DAX, that we use in Power BI. It's the equivalent of that, or of formulas that you can use in Excel, right? So this is kind of an overview of Microsoft Power Platform, and I'd be remiss to not say that Copilot has been integrated in every one of these tools as well, right? And in fact, I built this slide a few days ago. I wouldn't imagine if there's some things that have probably changed, because the velocity of change that's happening within this space is happening so quickly. So anyways, that is it on the Power Platform. Let's go ahead and move on to our first use case study. We're going to talk just a little bit about usage and adoption. Sorry, I put this slide in last minute. I think the key points to call out here, and so I'm not going to read through these, but on the usage side, on the left side here, is really the cost and time savings that companies have gotten from utilizing the Power Platform here. If we think about adoption, really amazing growth that's happened here. As of January 2024, 33 million active users, 50% growth on that, and you can see the rest of this. We know that this is going to be a growth area, and because of the fact that the ROI that you can see in the work that's done in the Power Platform is evident, and certainly, again, based on these large companies, you can see that as well. So All right, let's go ahead and move over to our first use case, which is push insights via SMS, utilizing Power Automate. So let's talk a little bit about this solution and what we did and how we went about doing it. So the real challenge or the problem here was that this client had a field sales report that provided metrics to their field sales folks on a daily basis, relative to what their goal is. And the challenge or the problem that they were seeing is lack of usage, right? So there was a report, and I think there was even a mobile version of that Power BI report that was available to folks, but nobody was actually using it, right? So really the concept here was, let's figure out a way to bubble up that information to the 1,300 plus sales representatives and managers, and give them the opportunity to see the information they need on a daily basis. Really, this is changing the model. This is going from a pull model where somebody has to pull their data from some kind of report or dashboard to pushing the data to people. And that's what was really interesting about doing this. And I think it was quite a success. So let's go ahead and kind of dig into what that looks like. So this is a diagram that's relatively simple, but when we look at things on the left side here, we're talking about what was done within the Power BI report. And I'll have a few more slides on this that'll give you a little bit better indication of how this all lays out. But we'll just start with the fact that in Power BI, as you may already know, that you can embed a Power Automate visual into your report that essentially becomes a button that is a manual trigger, right? And then with that, then you start setting up your flow. And in this case, again, utilizing Power Automate here, we had to do a few steps in order for this to work correctly. We had to basically grab data or this DAX query in the upper left corner of the right box. Then we had to parse this JSON content to make it more dynamic. And then from there, we're basically sending that information using a third-party service provider called Twilio for SMS text messaging. Now I think the last time I looked, there was about 10 to a dozen different service providers, but we in fact went with Twilio because this client already had an engagement or already had a contract with Twilio and was doing work with them. So it was just naturally made sense in this respect. So again, just to recap here, left side is the things that we did in Power BI and the right side is the Power Automate flow. Now we're going to look at a couple other slides that really kind of digs into this a little bit deeper. So left side here, this is the Power BI report that they had. The measures or metrics that you see in the box on the left, highlighted in red, are the items that they wanted to capture for their field sales folks, right? So they've got a total volume, they've got a minimum goal with a numeric value and how much to go to get to meet that 100% goal and then a maximum goal. So this data we wanted to be able to capture and utilize that in the text messaging that these 1,300 plus field sales folks would be getting. So the first step in any kind of flow here, especially if you're utilizing, I should say specifically if you're utilizing data that's coming from a Power BI report, is to then set up this, as we talked about before, setting up this Power Automate visual within the report. And really, I don't have a slide that shows that because it's a little bit detailed, but really, as you drop in this visual, then you have the ability to utilize these measures that you've already created and then use that to set up the flow. Now, think of this button as basically the manual trigger for the flow. And then the button can actually be hidden. You don't have to see the button, or it could be used as a manual trigger. But in this case, we didn't want a manual trigger. We wanted to be able to automate the trigger of sending these SMS text messages, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at this next slide. And so on the left side, you're actually seeing all 5 steps that are part of this flow. So let's talk about these just a little bit. And I'm not going to go, trying to keep this relatively high level. I'm not going to go really deep on a lot of this, but there are a few things that I want to call out here. So that first step, the recurrent step, this is the trigger that utilizes the button that's on the Power BI report. And that trigger basically starts the flow at a specified interval, in this case, once a day, and then at a specific time, which is 9 a.m. for this specific flow. Then the next step was to run a query against the data set. So this is really kind of where the magic happens, right? This is where you need to capture and define what this flow is supposed to do. And in fact, this is not a matter of having to write out that code. There was a little trick that we found in doing this where you can, if you're familiar again with Power BI, there is a feature within Power BI called the Performance Analyzer. And the Performance Analyzer is used to kind of go through and analyze how quickly a report runs things once you change like a slicer or something. But what it also gives you is the DAX query that gets sent to the model and then ultimately to the Vertipack storage engine. And that DAX code you can actually grab and use here in this step. And so that's exactly what we did here by dragging in the measures that we want, going into Performance Analyzer, running the flow and grabbing the DAX query allowed us to, again, in a very low code way, drop in what was needed in order to create this flow. And then the next flow is around parsing JSON. So this gets converted to JSON. And this is really important because it allows you to dynamically change the content as needed. And as we think about the fact that we have 1,300 sales folks, then you're dynamically needing to change a phone number and things like that. So that is part of the flow that needed to be added. And then finally, two further steps here, but this one here apply to each step. So of course, again, as we think about the fact that there's 1,300 plus different field salespeople, including managers, what we needed to do is iterate through that array. And so this step allows you then that iteration process so that you can then do one for a particular person, do the next one, and so forth. And then the final step of this flow is, in fact, building out what that text message is going to look like, right? So again, utilizing the JSON part that allows us to make this dynamic, we can drop in an account manager name or sales individual's name into the first line here. You can utilize text in here. As you can see, we've got hi, there are your stats of today. And then it's a matter of building out or trying to replicate essentially what we had in the Power BI report. So additional text and then dropping in those metrics or those DAX measures that were created to get you those specific data that you're looking for. And so we've kind of distilled this down into one slide. There was a lot of work involved, and I won't say that this was simple, but I will point out that one of the things that I love about the Microsoft Power Platform community, as well as Power BI specifically as well, which I utilize a lot, is your access to information, right? So now, while there wasn't a specific template that Power Automate flow or template that was available for this specific use case, there was a lot of pieces of it that we could pull together and utilize. And that community has a wealth of information that is available. And really, with that, it's a matter of just finding what you need. Now you layer on top of Copilot and ChatGPT your ability to get that information and understand how this flow works. It is unbelievable at this point. In fact, I started out, I actually had another person on my team do this work, but I started out by feeding it to Copilot and saying, okay, what would be the steps that we need to go through, and really just define these very well, and was allow us to lay this out in an approach that was, I think, the most efficient way to go. So finally, once we've looked at the 5 steps of the flow here, let's just see what the end result was of this work. Again, on the left side here, this is what we started with. These were the metrics, the DAX measures, the data that we wanted to collect, that now, because of this Power Automate flow, instead of the user having to go out to a report either on their phone, through the mobile version, or go out to the app.powerbi.com service, they now have the ability to get this information pushed to them through this Power Automate flow. And so, as you can see, on the right is what you would get on your phone, right? So yesterday you'll get, and obviously you'll get these coming in every day. You'll get a list of what your total sales volume is, your minimum goal, 100% goal, maximum goal, and then updated information on the next day. Lets you track, understand where you're at, what are those goals that you need to hit in order to get your bonus incentives, right? Let me pause there, Ruthie. Is there any questions that we got?
Yes, actually, we do have a question that came in, and the question is, how much coding is there in this? Is it low code, no code? How would you describe that?
Yeah, it's definitely not no code. So if we go, let's go back up a couple steps here, right? So there are some things that you need to do around this run a query against the data set, right? But as I said, the majority of that data you can actually pull out of the DAX query that's created out of Performance Analyzer, okay? And I mean, that's just a snippet of code that it gives you that you can drop in here where, it defines what you're trying to do. So again, this is a little different than writing a DAX measure. This is the code that gets sent to the model and then gets interpreted by the back end engine, what we call the Vertipack engine. And so there are some slight changes that would need to be made in here, but the bulk of that you're actually grabbing. Okay, and then from there, then it's a matter of, in the parse the JSON, of just defining some of these dynamic variables in there that need to change. And there is certainly good documentation around how to do that. Again, your Power Platform community has a wealth of information on that. And so with those are really the 2 steps where you would have to do any kind of coding. And again, there's a little bit here, but it's not a matter of starting from scratch, right? It's a matter of building on what you've already been able to gather from Power BI and from documentation around parsing JSON. And then again, for the bottom steps here, they apply to each. That is part of the Power Automate flow actions, and then send the text. Now you're just building out the message that wants to get sent here. So now that precludes the fact that we're talking about all the work that was done on the Power BI side with the report itself, right? But if you're starting with a base report, then you've got those DAX measures already created. You've got the semantic model already created. So now you're just repurposing that information for this Power Automate flow. Did that hopefully answer the question, Ruthie?
That's perfect. Thanks so much, Rick.
Okay, great. All right, so if we don't have any further questions, and I think I'm just right on time here, let's go ahead and move over to the second use case that we had, which was really a combination of a lot of different things, different components, but it was really at the end of the day trying to create a user interface for report, search, and discovery. So here's a problem, and this is not a problem that just this client has. This is a problem that any company that utilizes Power BI has, and that is the ability to search and find reports that across workspaces that have been created. And in fact, I'll just quickly show you. So if we go out to, this is the Microsoft Power BI service, or also known as your tenant. You can search across workspaces. You can also search within a workspace, but that search is only name based. So if I type in sales here, I'm pulling up reports and semantic models and dashboards that have some name related to sales in this case. Now, some of these are evident. You can see the name sales in the name of the report or the semantic model, but some of these are not that evident. So this executive dashboard, by the way, it has a visual called sales in it. So I know that's why that came up in the list, as well as a couple of these others where you don't see sales. There's actually a table in that semantic model that's called sales, which is why they've come up. So it's a little ambiguous, but it really is just a name-based search at the end of the day. So the other thing that you can do, so that makes it very difficult to find things, right? The other thing that Microsoft Power BI allows you to do is create an app. And I'm going to only show this because this was one of the things that that was brought up with the client. So they use apps quite a bit. Now, an app is just a collection of different reports that you want to bundle together and create this app that then users can use and see all of these reports together, right? So in this case, utilizing this app feature, you can put multiple reports into an app. And in fact, you can do grouping. So I could give a group name. So let's say I've got sales reports and I want to call it sales. Let's say I've got inventory reports and I want to call this category inventory. You can do that. Great. That helps you kind of do some semi-classification of your report. The challenge is that let's say you've got a report that has both sales and inventory data in it. You cannot put that in multiple categories. You've got to put it in one or the other. This was one of the challenges that this client had and was one of the reasons that we decided to go down this path and build a solution here that is flexible in its use, is efficient, that is able to grab reports and create a mechanism not only for just searching on a name, which, again, we see we can do that, but searching on additional metadata. And it's that metadata piece that is crucial to making this work. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a minute, but it's that metadata, the categorization, the taxonomy, the classification of a report that you want to capture that information for, that allows you then to have that rich search and discovery possibilities that you just don't have out of the box with Power BI's service, right? So let's go ahead and move over to the next slide. So this is a diagram that kind of lays out the components that we utilize to make this happen, right? And so this was not a matter of just standing up a Power BI report that connected to a bunch of information to make this happen. What we really had to do is create a foundation that could be utilized in one, getting certain data that's available, and then two, finding a way to input this metadata that I'm talking about in a way that can then be used in this, what we call this front end search tool or report. So we think about looking at this diagram. We've got back end tools and workflow. So let's just start here. Now, one of the things I will say, we were very fortunate with this client in that they already had data warehouse, the REST API report data that we needed to do this. Now, when I talk about report data, I'm talking about the name of the report pages that are available in a report. What workspace does that report live in? Is it part of an app? And then also, what is the usage of that report? Very critical information as we walk through this and I start showing you why. But that information is key for us from a search perspective. So how many views does that report have? How many distinct users have seen that report? That's going to allow us to rank a report, and we'll see that in a minute. All right. So one of the so again, very fortunate in already having this REST API data. And again, the REST API is the ability to capture a bunch of data from the service. And there's probably 170, 200 REST APIs. We only used maybe a dozen in this case, right? We didn't need all of them. Now, they had stood that up, and we could have actually stood this up pretty quickly on our own, but thankfully they already had that available. And in fact, it gives them the ability to utilize that data for other things moving forward. But that is a key part in developing this architecture, right? And so then we're pulling that data into a semantic model for Power BI, right? And that model, we're pulling in the reports, the report pages, the usage, the workspaces, whether it's part of an app, that kind of thing. And then as we move to the right here, still staying in the backend tools and workflow section, Power Automate was used to pull that data that was warehoused in SQL, that REST API data, and push that data into SharePoint lists. So this is another part of the puzzle here that we utilize SharePoint lists here. They already had SharePoint Online established. It was a good tool for us to utilize because we can also within SharePoint. Then as we move to the right here, we can actually set up a custom Power App form in SharePoint that allows us then to capture this metadata. And we'll talk a little bit more about it. Now, I don't worry about not being able to see these screenshots. I'm going to go through those in subsequent slides. I'm just trying to show kind of a diagram of how all this lays out, right? And then so SharePoint lists and the custom Power App are really talking back and forth to each other. So you set the foundation of establishing these SharePoint lists that you want, and then you're capturing data using this custom Power App, and that data then is getting utilized in the SharePoint list, and then we're marrying or meshing the data from the SharePoint list with the other data, the other REST API data that we've captured, and adding that into this semantic model and for this search report. And then building the interface for that, which was relatively simple, and we'll walk through that again. So this is really kind of the flow. Again, think of this as there is a set of backend tools and workflow that we used here. That includes the REST APIs, Power Automate, SharePoint lists, and Power Apps. And then for the front end, we utilize Power BI here. So really just it's bringing all of these different tool sets that are available out of Power Platform, excluding SharePoint, obviously, to create this this architecture, this tool that we wanted for the client. So as we just look at larger versions of that diagram here, again, this is just a matter of setting up the foundation for the SharePoint list, right? So we're capturing that REST API data, bringing it into a SharePoint list, and then adding some additional, what I would like to call magic here, because it really was. This is the key to being able to do this effectively. As you can see in this SharePoint list, I'm showing there was probably 20 to 30 columns of data, but we've got this edit link data column. And so by clicking the edit button, then what you get to is this custom Power Apps form. And so let's talk about this a little bit. So now, as you click on it, that's relative to the row that you were on and the data that was available for that. But really, again, the magic of this is the ability to input data into this form, essentially, this Power Apps form. So you can enter a description. That description could be anything. It's not character limited. There is a description field that's kind of hidden out in the Power BI service, but it is character limited, I think like 256 characters. So it's even hard. You could do it there, but it's hard to get all the information sometimes that you want to add into it. So this was a field that we added. Category. So let's talk about this list of things here. These are custom categories. And in fact, SharePoint list has what they call a term store, which is really a taxonomy service. Now, this client had already set up these categories, but they're very easy to set up and anybody could do that, and they could be anything, right? We decided to utilize some that they already had. They had this channel group, channel, key accounts, divisions, and sales center. And we decided to utilize those because those are different ways to capture additional information that could be helpful from a search and discovery perspective around a report, right? And we then also created a category. So this gives them, as we think again about the categorization that they might have used in the Power BI app, they could utilize that same categorization structure here. But the great thing in here and in utilizing Power Apps is we're not restricted to only just one category. You could add as many categories here. When we talk about these other fields available, you could add multiple categories or fields within that category to give you, again, that richness that might be needed. If you think about it from probably only one division that would make sense for a particular report, but key accounts, you can imagine if that is one of those custom fields that you wanted to set up, that this report might handle multiple key accounts. So having the ability to do multiples across these different categories or fields is crucial. And then as we move to the bottom here, a report image. So really, really loved this idea. It was, in fact, one that I thought would allow us to provide some context around a particular report. So capturing the image of the main page is all we did to start with. But clearly you could do that for all report pages. And we'll talk about maybe in future enhancements, some of the things that you could do around that. But we just captured the main report image. And so once capturing that, then you use this app, this Power App, to then add that image that then gets added to the SharePoint list and then allows that to be utilized in the front end reporting tool. And then finally, tags. Tags is pretty common use across a lot of different domains and environments. Not one that's necessarily used in Power BI. So we created a tag. So again, what's cool about this tag feature is if you utilize the drop down here, it bubbles up all of the tags that are available, so you can reuse tags that have already been set up. You also have the opportunity to create new custom tags within this. So as you can see, there's a new add new tag button here. So you could add a tag, and then that tag gets added to the list that could be used by the next person that is trying to add metadata to a report that gets published. So again, to me, this is really the critical part, because this gives you that additional metadata that allows you to do that search and discovery on a report that you just can't do any other way. All right. So let's talk about, so again, those last couple of slides was the back end part of the tool. So then let's talk a little bit about the front end. Again, we utilize Power BI here as our search tool to do this. And really, this is a very simple report. As you can see, we've utilized a custom visual. It's called the text search slicer, and that's this visual right here at the top. And what's nice about this, now I will say there isn't a search visual or mechanism within Power BI that allows you to search across your complete model or data set and find things. But what this tool allows you to do, and worked well in this case, was then to drop in those dimensional fields that would be important in your search criteria, right? So report name, again, you've got report name, but that's okay. The report name is one place to start with. But then that report description that got added, you can search on that. Or a category, you can search on that. Or a tag can be searched on. So if you enter a search criteria in the search box here and hit enter, it's going to start pulling things up based on the report name. But then you could click on the report description button or the category button and see what bubbles to the surface here with regards to reports that meet that criteria. The other parts here that are just, again, very common. This is just a table visual where you could add and whatever columns of data that you want. You can see I don't have a report description in here, but you can define that. It's a table. It's just a matter of dragging fields into that table. Report images. Now you won't see those when you're in the Power BI desktop, but when you publish this out to the service, then you'll certainly see those images. I will say the only thing about creating this report that had any kind of challenge to it was in Power Query. We did have to do a little bit of work on concatenating a base URL image with the report ID with the image name. But again, as any of you that have used Power Query, excuse me, you know that that's not difficult to do. It's just a matter of a few steps to concatenate these other fields together that gives you the URL needed to go to that image that's saved out into the cloud. And then to just round this off, there's again just slicers over here on the right, which could help you refine your search, or you could even start with that as your search criteria and then type something else into the search box. Really gives you two different ways to go about this. But those slicers on the left are in fact, outside of report name, are those metadata fields that we're capturing in the Power Apps. And then finally, just to add some more richness to this particular report, we just created a tooltip page that gives you a larger image of the report. It gives you the report pages, which can give you a little bit more of insight on what is available in the report. And again, sometimes it really kind of comes down to governance. It depends on how your report author is naming those pages, but in some cases it can give you insight. And then really a really great useful piece here is, as we talked about, you have the REST API data that we're capturing around report usage and users. That information can be utilized here in showing the usage for a particular report. Now, in fact, the report itself is sorted on report views. So in this instance, as you look at this, we just typed in the word CMI for this search criteria. It's pulling out reports that have CMI in it, and it is bubbling the number one use report to the top here. And so this CMI Kroger dashboard is the third most utilized report. Now, we were a little constrained in the time that we had for this. There's plenty more things that we could do around this. We could have done a RankX function to rank these a little bit better based on both report views and distinct users. We could have probably done some color coding that might have helped identify ones that are used. But again, that part is very important. I don't want, if I'm coming in here and looking for reports, I don't want a report that has been maybe seen once and been refreshed last year, hasn't been refreshed. That tells me that report hasn't been used, right? I want to see the most used reports, because those are the ones that other people are using and getting insights from relative to your search criteria. So let me pause there. Ruthie, did we have any questions on this second use case around creating this architecture for being able to search and discover for reports?
I haven't seen anything come in yet, but if anyone does have questions, Rick is readily available to answer them live right now. So feel free to add them in the comments section, and we'll be sure to ask him away.
Great, thank you, Ruthie. And then finally, as we think about, again, as I had mentioned, we were a little bit constrained in the time. We got this done within about a 3-week window, 3 to 4 weeks window. There was plenty of other things that we thought about that we would have loved to do, but this was really more of kind of a proof of concept utilizing these different tools. And so some of the things that certainly would be that we would want to do if we were to do this again is automate that report image capture process, right? So it was manual, but there is absolutely a way utilizing Power Automate to essentially pull up published reports, screen grab either the main page or any of the subsequent pages that are available in that report, save that information out somewhere into the cloud, and then be able to utilize that in the Power App tool that allows you to add an image, right? The other thing that we could do around Power Automate was to kick off an email to the person responsible for adding that additional metadata for a report. So once a report gets published, hey, this person that's their job to go do this, because it may not be the report author themselves. It could be maybe even sending it to the report author would be fine as just a reminder. Hey, go fill out this form and fill out these metadata fields so that we have that data available attached to that specific report that now is published. And then as we think about some really cool things that we could do with this tool, generative AI, right? So we could utilize LLMs to do natural language search across the inventory of reports, right? We get data back from that and utilize that. That could be data that we're capturing as then search criteria that comes up in the report. And then leveraging a multimodal model, that's a mouthful, to generate report descriptions from the screenshots, right? So think about training a model over the screenshots that you've got, that you've captured, and having it pull out specific information. What are the names of things on there? What are the visuals? What are the measures that could be shown in a particular visual? Pulling that information out, again, providing more richness of data that is available for your search and discovery process.
And Rick, I just wanted to hop on super quick because we did have a question come through.
Great.
Similar to the first question that I asked, but this one is directed to the second solution. So how much code is in this? Low code or no code?
Yeah, I would say very low code. So if we go back, let's go back to here. So clearly there's going to be some coding to pull in REST API data. But again, Power Platform community and Power BI specifically has really good documentation about how to do that. And again, we're talking about just a handful, maybe a dozen REST API calls or endpoints that you need here. You don't truly need the nearly 200 that are available, right? So there is a process. So there's certainly some involved in that. So some engineering involved in getting that set up. Power Automate Flow, it's going to be relatively low code there, but again, it's going to be utilizing this data that you've stood up in SQL or wherever else you're standing it up. In fact, it could be Dataverse or some other data warehousing tool. Doesn't really matter at that point, but your Power Automate Flow does need to grab that data and then move it into SharePoint lists. So there's certainly going to be some there, but I don't think we're not talking about writing hundreds of lines of code here to make that happen. It's a matter of replicating things that already exist and repurposing code that already exists to make that happen. Again, this was done in a 3 to 4 week time period, and I honestly think part of that was just the iteration back and forth with the client on kind of figuring out what we wanted to do here. The actual work was really about 2 weeks. But there was a lot of back and forth on, understanding the right tools that we wanted to use, understanding the licensing models, right? Whether or not they needed to pay for Power Apps. We were able to kind of get around some of that licensing by using a Power Apps form within SharePoint, instead of paying for full Power Apps license. Now, some of that, again, you get when we think about the Power Platform, you get with Office 3 or 365 E5 licenses. Reading the licensing for Microsoft is like Latin or hieroglyphics, right? There's so many variables involved in figuring out, what you have to pay for and what you don't have to. So there was a lot of back and forth in trying to figure that out as well, to do this in the most cost-effective way for our client. But outside of that, then there's certainly some low coding involved in doing the form, right? So, but if you've got a Power Apps developer, that is what they do, right? That's a matter of setting that up. And as we know, Power Apps, again, there's a lot of plug and play components in Power Apps that allows you to do this without a lot of coding, right? But you do have to understand the structure and what you're trying to accomplish there. And then as we look back, no absolute coding for the front end search report tool here. We're utilizing everything that's available in Power BI. You do need to know some Power Query tricks to do some concatenation and other things. But again, that's not outside the realm of typically what a Power BI developer is doing. So hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rick.
Great. And so we do have a couple of minutes here. We think about other things that we've been able to do within Blueprint. Obviously, there's a lot of things around Power Automate that are very common. We think about. I think about one instance of one of my team members has done, where we've got a client that has a very complex architecture in the Power BI service. They're utilizing data flows, right? And data flows is essentially your Power Query in the cloud. Allows you to pull a lot of things together and then utilize that as part of your semantic model. Well, they set up a Power Automation flow that serially goes through and refreshes data sets relative to their priority order, right? So some of them might need to get refreshed before others. And then your semantic models that underlie the data flows, then those need to get refreshed, obviously, after the data flows get refreshed, so that you're picking up all the data. And then working into that flow was notifications. So let's say one of the data flows, something happened and it didn't actually refresh, kicking off an email to owners saying, hey, this refresh failed, you need to go look at it, and basically stopping the flow from going through and refreshing anything that has dependency on that flow, so that it wouldn't go through and take capacity and other things. So a lot of work done around that. We've got people on my team that have done really good stuff around Power Apps. I think of one example of with a client that deals with communities, many different, like 100+ different communities within their organization, and that there's always community meetings that come up. Creating a Power App to be able to capture the information that comes out of the meeting, at the attendees of a particular meeting. And I don't even think they got so far, but they could probably build in, like now with Copilot, the information that was talked about the meeting, but utilizing Power Apps then to organize hundreds of different meetings that happen and capture that information in a way that's useful for the team as they think about analyzing who's attending what, who's part of what community, that kind of thing. So really a lot of good examples that we've done in here at Blueprint, and we would love the opportunity to do additional ones with other folks and other companies, and really get you involved in what's happening. Like I said at the beginning, the Power Platform is transforming the way businesses do their work, their automation, their workflows, and there are so many opportunities to save cost and time by setting up certain things that you can do with Power Platform. So,
excellent. Thank you so much, Rick. That was incredibly insightful, and I'm sure that everyone watching it is just excited about the possibilities with Power Platform. So I'm going to add in a quick link in the comments here. So we released a case study on the first portion that Rick spoke to, which is the automated SMS. And so if you want to read a little bit more in depth on that, feel free to click on that link and hop onto our website. We will be releasing the second solution case study soon as well. So keep an eye out on our social media, because we will be posting it there as soon as it goes live. It's a lot of awesome information. And like Rick said, there's so many things you can do with Power Automate to save costs, save time. So if you'd like a demo for your team, personalized to your company, or a specific solution that you need help with, we'd love to connect on that. You can email us at info@bpcs.com, or simply go to bpcs.com and fill out the contact us form, and we'll be sure to get in touch with you on that. Thank you all so much for joining us. A huge thank you to Rick for hosting this webinar and doing all of this really great work for our client as well. Thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you at our next webinar. Thank you so much, and have an awesome rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ruthie.